Do you read Stephen King? Good news, there's a club for you. The Losers Club. Every Friday, us losers journey through the never-ending wastelands of King's Dominion. We sink our teeth into each of King's novels, dive deep into the lore, and review every adaptation. Even better, we're always having guests over. Thomas Jane, Will Wheaton, Mary Lambert, Mick Garris, the list goes on. So what are you waiting for? Join us as we read on through long days and pleasant nights.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith With. It's an audio interview series presented by WFPK Independent Louisville at WFPK.org. Consequence of Sound and the Consequence Podcast Network. Take a second before we get started to hit the subscribe button wherever you get your favorite podcasts from. That might mean listening on iTunes and Apple Podcasts, or if you're checking us out on YouTube or Spotify, you can follow along there as well. We do release interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at consequenceofsound.net. I'm Kyle Meredith. Today my guest is Noel Hogan of the Cranberries. They're releasing their final album, In the End, on April 26th. Of course, this comes just about a year after the passing of Dolores, which is just really one of the saddest bits of news that we have gotten. But there was enough material recorded that the band was able to salvage what Dolores had already committed to tape and really put out one of the best records of their career called In the End. I'm going to be talking to Noel about what it took to get the record to that place, where this all started for them. We'll talk about some of those songs like All Over Now, Wake Me When It's Over, and In the End. Titles that sort of mean something different now than what they originally intended when Dolores wrote them. We'll talk about plans they might have once this is all done. And we'll also talk about some of the anniversaries coming up. No Need to Argue has its 25th year. They also played Woodstock 94, so we're going to go back there, figure out what that whole gig was like. And yes, get a few details on some unreleased music that maybe we can expect sooner than later. It's Kyle Meredith with the Cranberries. Thank you for doing this. This is a big honor. I've been such a fan of you all for the whole run.
Yeah. It's a kind of mixed emotions on it, really. Yeah.
I mean, In the End, that is the actual title of it. It is a song on the record as well, but it sums it up, coming out April 26th. This record is so good. It's one of the best things I think that the Cranberries ever done, in that remarks, congratulations. I mean, I guess all the accolades or compliments that come along with this, it all sort of has that dark lean to it, right? I mean, we're saying congratulations, but it's with a tear.
Yeah, it's a weird one because as someone said to me, we've been doing a promo tour for, I guess, a month or so now around Europe before we go to the States. And people are kind of saying, you're out promoting the end, the end of you really is what you're doing in many ways, because it's just like for us right now, and the last 12 months has just been so crazy that it just feels like it's the right thing to do now, is to just kind of finish with this. We're looking at it in a kind of funny way in that we consider ourselves really lucky that we're able to do this album, that we had enough there with Dolores that we can kind of grow out on a high, if you want to say it that way, because I do think the album is really strong, and I think it's a good way to finish. But like it's kind of mixed emotions, as I say, because you wonder, in a year's time, are you going to be like kind of sitting here kind of going, I'd really love to play live again, I'd love to do this again or that, and it's really hard to tell. It's just been such a kind of whirlwind year, really, from the 15th of January of last year when Dolores passed away to this very day. The whole thing it's almost a blur. I wonder in a month or two's time when it's all done and dusted, how I'll view this now. You kind of wonder about that sometimes.
A lot of people have asked you, like, oh, would you put a different singer? And you've shot that down, and I think to a certain degree, I agree with that too. But I did wonder about what you were saying there. Is there that desire to want to play these songs live, like maybe even once for like one of those tribute shows where you get a bunch of vocalists or something like that?
Yeah, there's definitely, look, I'd be lying if I said no. I don't want to hear them live, because in many ways the first time we played them was the last time we played them, because we played them to record them and we haven't played them since. So it's, and you are constantly wondering, oh, I know what that would be like live, and how we would have worked it, and because you always kind of change things up a bit. And so, like, look, I'll never say never, because so many bands over the years, oh, that's it, we're never doing that, it's never going to happen. And then a year later,
right,
they're on a stage somewhere together. So and you'll be ringing me up going, you said you'd never do it. So right now, you know what it is, I guess it's very raw and emotional still for the three of us. Even though a year and a bit has passed since Laura's passed away, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like it's only a few weeks. Mm-hmm. So, and it's hard to imagine yourself standing on a stage with somebody else in between the three of us. So I don't know if time will change that, but right now we feel that this is the kind of way to bow out of this thing.
Sure. Well, let's then jump into the actual album itself with In the End. So from what I gather, this sort of starts with the Something Else live shows when it all comes together. Now, playing those old songs, this album, In the End, really does have a lot of that classic feel to it for the first time in a while. Does that have anything to do with it because you all were doing the Something Else tour, concentrating on the older songs?
Well, I guess the thing I can be thankful for the tour was that we were playing the older songs, but Dolores and I had started going, it'd be great to play some new songs. We were kind of playing them going, yeah, this is great and it's lovely that we've done these other versions and all that, but we hadn't kind of written together in a while. And for the Something Else album, there's 3 new songs on that. But there's one core out, which was the one called The Glory is the name of it. And we really enjoyed doing that. And we kind of thought, it'd be fun to kind of do some more of that because we hadn't done anything since the last brand new album of all new tracks was back in 2012. So a lot of time had passed. So at the rehearsals for that tour, we got talking about that. Then the very, very first day of that tour, we went to Poland. We were starting there, and there was a day off when we got there. And with the kind of thought in my head that, Dolores and I had been talking about writing, I spent that whole day working in my hotel room on a track, which is actually on the album. And I sent it to her later that night, said, look, I've been doing this all day. And that was really how it began. Sent her that track. She loved it. She started working on it. It's called, on the album, the name of the track is A Place I Know. So it kind of launched with that. Then we were on the tour and we were both tipping away kind of individually. And when Dolores kind of couldn't tour anymore because of her back problem, she went back to New York. I ended up in France and I was on my own there and Dolores was in New York on her own and bored. And she kind of rang me and she said, look, would you be on for writing? Let's kind of to keep this thing going. So I said, yeah, I'd love to. It would give me something to do as well, and we can use the time off productively. So we didn't say anything to anyone. We just went off and started emailing each other ideas over and back for the following 6 months then. So that was June of 2017 up until December. So we've been doing the co-writes. Dolores had been tipping away on songs on our own over in New York. So we started to build this catalogue of songs then. And the plan was that in 2018, we would kind of go in and start recording the album that you have today, this album.
So what's so amazing about, to that point, is these are, in that sense, demo vocals. And when I say that, it's like, holy cow, these are demo vocals? That just goes to show how amazing she was. I mean, those are...
Yeah, I've been saying that to people, like, when I first kind of told people we were doing this with like demo vocals, like, are you serious? Thinking a demo is, kind of a throwaway thing. But it's not unusual for us to use demo vocals. She was that good that, the quality, if she really felt something in a song, she gave it all. And it's like not the first time she would have come in and kind of redone a vocal and gone, oh, I actually prefer the demo. Let's use that. And we've done that before. So it was kind of, when we went through all the songs, we felt, yeah, there's enough here. She's done enough. Like, this is, we can do this album. There was a few that didn't make the album that they were demos as well, but they just weren't up to scratch. She would have kind of left out words or hummed a bit or just give me a bit of a chorus and or a bit of a verse and nothing else. And so those ones, it's a pity because they had great potential, but they'll never be heard. So what these 11 tracks were the ones that were kind of more or less finished really in the demo shape. But what they needed was Mike and Ferg in particular, you need the Cranberries rhythm section to make it that whole song, to make it a Cranberries song.
Now, she had just come off the Dark Project, that band, which must have been invigorating in some way, as I kind of see in the interviews. And I don't know, did you notice any of the influence from that making its way onto what she was doing with you?
No, we had conversations about it, because we did like to go off and kind of work with other people individually, outside the Cranberries as the years went on, because we found that you may not be kind of coming back to the Cranberries with kind of, I wanted to go this direction now. You wouldn't have that attitude, but you subconsciously, these things do sit in your mind and influence you. And, she'd said to me, "Oh, I really like doing that. It was fun, but I want to go back to do this now," because her big thing was that she hated singing to programmed drums. That was, she said, "There's no movement there. I don't like that. It's, it's too weird. I need the more human flow of things, where things speed up and slow down." As much as she used to kill us sometimes live, because we would wander around in the tempos slightly more than we probably should have. But in even saying that, she, that's what she enjoyed. So she definitely, I think more than anything on this album, what I've noticed, and when every time she kind of called, was she kept saying, "I've loads to say. I've had so much go on in my life in the last 3 or 4 years that I want to get it out there." So I couldn't write quick enough to get the stuff to her for her to sing on. She had tons to say, and that's why I guess a lot of the subject matter in these songs, it's about really kind of things coming to an end and finishing, and that, was really her saying about that part of her life was gone now, was behind her, and that she was moving on.
I mean, you get that from the first single, one in the title alone. I mean, All Over Now, which, as I understand, is a song that deals with domestic abuse, but obviously that meaning means something for all of us. Did it change in that same way for you?
Yeah, look, people will read a lot more into some of these songs than she ever meant to be. What she was really talking about is all these things in her life coming to an end and her moving on. But obviously, a lot of it is about when you talk about ending of things and then the ending of the band. It just, people will kind of put it together in their own mind that was it. But it was really, the album was written as just another Cranberries album. Like, this is the next Cranberries album. And we had always thought, there'll be another one and so on. So it was never meant to be that way, but there is no way you can kind of dodge that thing now, where people they know it's the last album, they know Dolores has passed away, so they're going to read far more into these lyrics than she would have intended. But she liked that kind of thing as well. In fairness, she used to get a kick out of it. She hated explaining what songs were about to people, because she'd like people to take their version of it, their interpretation.
But in that sense, it is a bit of a shame, because when she was writing about very personal things, but these are big themes that help out people in the end, so to kind of be obscured a bit in that way, I mean, that part's a bit of a shame, I guess. Yeah,
it is, but it's unfortunately, it's something, that we kind of have to live with for it's like, I have sat there some nights wondering what she would have thought of this album now, the finished version. But that's the kind of stuff that you can drive you mad. You're kind of wondering what she would have done, and would it still sound the same or whatever. But it's just one of those things you kind of just have to, you'll never know.
Well, let me look into one too deep here as something that I sort of had a mini mind-blowing moment when I put the two together, because when you go back to the very first record and the very first track, I Still Do, she says the line, "I can't see the future." And when you go to the very last song of your very last album, it's followed by "Everything you wanted was nothing that you wanted in the end." I mean, it reads like a story. The literal last words are "the end," and that's I mean, I guess that's complete coincidence as we're talking here, but now I don't know another band where you can look at a catalog where it starts at a beginning of a story and ends at one in lyrically in such an interesting way. I mean, that's the stuff of myth making right there,
Yeah. Yeah, it's look, the whole thing has just been a kind of a series of weird kind of, coincidences really in many ways, because she like that song in the end, we're there playing it on the last day, and you're kind of going, oh God, this is so weird. Like this was our last day recording, our last day playing together as the Cranberries, and we were listening to the lyrics of this song, and you're going like, I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up really, and it was just bizarre, kind of, and when we finished recording it that day, we kind of thought, yeah, that's the title of the album right there. It wrote itself, as they say.
Beyond that, I'll also throw a big old compliment to "Wake Me When It's Over." I mean, it's a harder song. It harkens back to some of those heavier songs that you do, and kind of stands out in that way on the record. Did that come from anywhere specific?
Well, that was, it's a real kind of classic, it's one of Dolores' songs, and it has that kind of feeling of Zombie to me. That's what that kind of softer verse with a big anthem-y kind of chorus, and as far as I know, it'll be the next single as well. It'll be the second single from the album, because it kind of, when we heard it, we thought, yeah, that's got all the elements that you need. Because the surprising thing we found is that the first single came out, and everybody was going, oh, that's not at all what we expected. We thought it was going to be like this kind of morbidy, maybe an acoustic track or a piano track or something, really downbeat. And everybody was just really surprised that it was like this kind of big, rocky kind of drum intro kind of thing and all this. So I think I like the idea that the next single is down that vein as well, of a big kind of rock song, because it drives home the fact that this album was written just as another Cranberries album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites right now of the year on top of that, but I'm a big fan of it. And so many on here. This does put it all to bed, but there is the idea, and I've heard you all talk about it a little bit, that later on in the year, No Need to Argue will celebrate its 25th, and I was wondering if there are plans for it to follow in the everybody else's footsteps in the way that the anniversary editions.
Yeah, there'll be something, but it's kind of harder. It's a bit of a hard one, because with the first one, we had done so much stuff before that album came out that had never been released. It was actually, in a small way, easier to get bits, because you had a lot of demo recordings and live stuff and photos no one had ever seen before. So you'd all that. Whereas when the second album came out, we had the success of the first album, and everything we were doing was released more or less straight away between radio sessions and gigs. And so it's proving a bit more difficult to find kind of unheard things or kind of rarities. Now, we are working on it, but it may not have the as kind of a large presence as the first one, because we were really, really happy with that. I thought it looked great, and it had tons in there that nobody had ever heard, and a lot of stuff we'd even forgotten about. So there'll be something, but I don't think it'll be on the same size as the first one.
Now, I know that same year, and hopefully it's okay that I spent a second in 1994 here, because, here we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Woodstock, which you all played the 25th anniversary of Woodstock that year. And, hearing some of that, I went back and I think it was Dreams that got released on the actual soundtrack. But if you can go back there for a second, like, what do you remember about that gig? Because was it different than other shows, I guess, is what I'm asking?
Yeah, it was. Like, it's funny because it's still to this day has stood out for each one of us. It was just, we had never played to a crowd that size, and it was just like, when you looked out on that stage, I mean, as far as you could see into the horizon was just bodies everywhere, and they were all just going absolutely insane. And we were on early enough that day. We managed to avoid the rain came down, and it all got muddy and all messy afterwards. So we were lucky in that sense that we were long gone. But it's always been one that we remembered because of the vastness of it. We had never done anything like that, and we were still kind of, in many ways, it was still early days for us, even though we were having a lot of success. You play gigs, every day, but nothing like that. So I can kind of remember like it was yesterday, really.
What was the camaraderie? Well, I should say, was there camaraderie with the bands? Were you all able to do that in that setting?
No, it was too big, because I remember there was the backstage area was literally a helicopter right away. So that's how you got.
Wow.
you got kind of shipped from, it was a kind of a lake, right? I remember this, it was a lake and a kind of a lower, like a campsite, but it was actually, that was the backstage area. And then you got on a helicopter and you went over, you landed literally behind the stage. And my brother, the bass player, Mike, he wouldn't get in the helicopter. He had a fear of it. So he ended up getting a boat, had to leave way before we did to get across the lake. But it was just so you kind of went there, you did that, you were on, and then they kind of wanted you out of there because there was too many bands, too many people around for everybody to be hanging around the place. So it was a really quick day in that sense.
Yeah. Now, I just heard that the Green Day is actually releasing their set on a Record Store Day. Do you all have the rights to that? Is that something you all could ever do, is start releasing some live shows, especially one like that?
Yeah, I'm sure we could. And because it was for this Record Store Day, we had an idea only about maybe a month ago, but we were way too late. So it's something we might do next year with a song from this album and one from an older album, that slightly different versions that we have that we're looking at doing. So next year, I think, is the plan to try and do something a bit special.
Well, I mean, that's good to know, because even if the album cycle is kind of closing, just knowing that there's still stuff that the fans can kind of grab onto and everything like that. So that's exciting. That's in that way.
Yeah.
Noel, it was such a pleasure talking to you. This is a beautiful record. It's a fantastic record, and for how it had to happen, I love it. I really do.
Great. Thank you so much. That's great. It's good to hear that, because we've lived with it for it's really. I actually looked this morning for something else. It was the 16th of April last year. It was the first day of recording, so it's almost a year since we started this, and it's a long time to live with an album. So it's great to kind of, because you're anxious about what will people make of it and everything. So when you start to get a bit of feedback back from people, it's fantastic, and you've done the right thing then.
Well, I'm so glad that we have this music. That you were far enough along that we could get this music. It's very fortunate. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.
My thanks to Noel Hogan of the Cranberries. The new record is called In the End. And hey, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button before you get out of here. You made it this far. Whether you're checking us out on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, maybe listening on Spotify or on YouTube, really wherever you get your favorite podcasts from, subscribe so you can keep up with us. After that, you can head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show every Monday through Thursday from noon to 3 Eastern, where you can also find some bonus episodes of this series. Hit up consequenceofsound.net for all your music and film news needs. You can find me at Twitter at Kyle Meredith and Facebook/Kyle Meredith. That does it for another edition of Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.